Welcome back, everyone. In today's video, we're going to be covering absolute and relative references using the F4 shortcut in Excel. And we'll see in our two examples, one with the data vertically in example 1, and the other one in example 2 with the data horizontally, how these absolute, relative, and mixed references will affect autofilling formulas and copying and pasting our formulas into different columns and different rows. So really quick, an overview of this worksheet is in the top right-hand corner. We have the different types of references, their names, and what they look like. And in the box below, we have the characteristics of each reference in the same order that I listed them in above. And let's jump right in to see the differences between relative, absolute, mixed type 1, and mixed type 2. So hopping over really quick to example 1, we're going to calculate sales tax. And so we're going to hit equals, go B3 because that's our subtotal, and times, say, 0.1, 10% sales tax in this case. Now, this is the relative reference. This is the automatic reference that Excel will use when you type in any formula. Now, if you hit Control-C and Control-V, paste it into the column shift, you see as we change columns, the formula updated the columns and it's referencing D4 automatically. That's why it gives us 0. If we go down to a different row, it changes from B3 to B13, and B13 has nothing in it, so it's going to give us 0 as well. This is the characteristic of a relative reference. And as we go, get rid of those, and as we autofill down, we see that it does update automatically for the different inputs in all the different B column. And we'll see it copies and pastes over. If we shift the column, it won't work because it's now referencing all the D columns. And if we go to the row shift and paste it, it also won't work because it's referencing the rows in column B that don't have any data. And this is the basic characteristic of a relative reference. It allows for autofill, but any type of shifting will not work. So the next type of reference we have is the absolute reference. So going back over to our formula, clicking on it and going up to the formula banner, highlighting the reference part and hitting F4 once, will pop up a $sign in front of the B and a $sign in front of the 3. And what this does is it locks in the B value and the 3 value so that no matter where we copy and paste it, whether it be a different column, different row, it'll always return the value that's in B3 times 0.1. That's why it always works. But the issue comes is when we try to autofill values. Because it's always going to return B3, guess what? Regardless of what we put in B4, B5, B6, it's only returning B3 times 0.1. Now we move to mixed type 1. Going back to our formula, highlighting the reference in the formula banner, hitting F4, we see that it gets rid of the $sign in front of the B, but it leaves the $sign in front of the 3. Now what this means is it means the row number is locked in, but not the column. So as we column shift, it updates the column reference. And as we row shift, it keeps the row reference. That's why it works as we row shift, but does not work as we column shift. Now something interesting to note is, as we autofill down the column, it's going to keep the 3 value, so it's always going to return $1 because it's still going to reference that B3, which is $10. But as we go across the row, it's going to update it to C3. That's why it's going to return us 10 cents because 10% of $1. So that's kind of how mixed type 1 works. Now we'll move on to our final type, mixed type 2. As you guessed, go back to our formula, highlight it, hit F4 one more time, and we see the $sign shifts to now it's only in front of the B, not in front of the 3. And now this locks in the column, but not the row. That's why our column shift works, but our row shift does not work. And because our data is vertical, we can autofill down the column and it will work because we're staying in the same column, but the rows are changing. But as we try to autofill across the row, it won't work. And we'll copy and paste those into the column shift. We see that it keeps the values because we locked in that B value. But as we go down the row, it doesn't lock in the row value, so it will not work. And that pretty much sums up example 1. Now we'll go ahead and Control-Z so we undo the row shift, column shift, hit F4 one last time to get it back to relative, and then double click on the bottom right hand corner, autofill it. And that pretty much finishes up example 1, the mixed references with vertical data. Now let's move on to example 2, horizontal data. So in example 2, we're going to be calculating pay by multiplying hours by the rate. And you see that we do F21 times F20 and we get $100. Now we see there's no dollar signs. This is purely a relative reference. We autofill across the row. Excel does it just fine with the relative reference. But as we copy and paste it in a different column in different rows, we see it doesn't work. As we scan through our cell values, we see Excel automatically updated what columns we were calling and what row numbers we were calling, and it doesn't work. So we'll hit Control Z, clear those out, and now let's move on to the second type, absolute. We go back, hit F4 on both of our data points on the F21 and F20, and as we try to autofill, guess what? We're going to get 100 across everything because it locked in the F21 and the F20 values. And as we column shift, because F's locked in, it's not going to change. And because 20 and 21 are locked in, the row shift is not going to change either. That's kind of like the concrete nature of the absolute reference in Excel. Going back, hitting F4 one more time on F21 and F20, and we see we have mixed type 1. As we autofill across the row this time, see what happens. It does work. But as we try to go down, we'll see really quick that it does not work because it's locking in the row value, but not the column. We see it just copied and pasted the same $100 value. So we'll get rid of that bottom one and we're going to copy and paste it into the column shift and row shift, and we'll see what happens. Now as we see, we copy it, paste it in the column shift, we see it doesn't work. But the rows do work because the rows were the values we did lock in. That's essentially the nature of type 1, and it's summarized in the characteristic box in green. So as we go back through the cell references, we see, there it is. Rows didn't get updated, but columns did. Now we'll go back through, review really quick the last one, mixed type 2, hit F4 one last time on F21 and F20, and we get the mixed type 2. So the columns are locked in, but the rows are not. So as we try to autofill across the row, we see it will not work, but as we go down, you'll see it updates it. So now it's going to calculate 10 times 100 gives us 1,000. Because again, the column's locked in, but the row is not locked in. And now copying and pasting those values in a different column. Columns are locked in, so column shift works. Rows are not locked in, so row shift does not work. Kind of scanning back through, see what our cells are referencing, and that's pretty much it. That's how it changes based on if we have horizontal or vertical data, and the table of characteristics sums it up pretty well. Thank you again for watching the video, and honestly the best advice I could give is to just mess around a little bit with the referencing so you can remember what reference affects which shifts and when is it okay to use relative, when is it okay to use absolute, and just to remember the properties of each and to remember how to change it, how to get the dollar signs to cycle through with F4. Practice helps a ton, and you can always refer back to this video if you ever get lost. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day. Bye.